Hello and welcome to another episode of the When Life Gives You Lemons podcast, brought to you by Dayspring Bank. I'm your host, Morgan Maly, hearing stories from local entrepreneurs. And today I'm joined here with Maly, who is the co-founder and CEO of Superb Shifts. So hearing an entrepreneurial story in the healthcare world.
I'm very excited to be here today.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So why don't I just open the floor up for you to talk a little bit about yourself, maybe your educational background. I know you worked as a CNA from a young age, so maybe just tell us a little bit about your journey getting into your professional career.
Yeah, absolutely. I always joke and say that I've basically grown up in a nursing home. I started as a dietary aide and then a CNA in high school at an assisted living in Gretna, Nebraska, and then worked my way up through college and got a degree in physical therapy. Started out as a physical therapist in a nursing home, then transitioned to a director of therapy, and went back and got my master's in geriatrics and continued to stay in the assisted living nursing home world, working with seniors. So my last position before I started my own company was the program director of Douglas County Health Center. So it's the largest nonprofit nursing home here in the state of Nebraska, and kind of jumped into that role, got to see behind the curtain and the business aspects of the senior care industry, and that's kind of when I decided to jump and start my own business. But definitely, as we were talking about earlier, started with a full healthcare background, not knowing too much about the business side of geriatrics, but here I am today running a tech company.
Yeah.
Quite the transition.
Clash of two worlds.
Yeah.
Just kind of going back to your passion for healthcare, what was it that drew you into that profession? And it sounds like you love geriatrics. What was it dealing with that population that kind of stuck with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, first job as a CNA, working in assisted living, I loved the older adult population specifically because they have absolutely no filter. They will tell you exactly what is on their mind. They also are full of wisdom and just in a stage of life where they want to be around family and happy, but are not afraid to speak their mind. And so I just felt like every day there was a hysterical, comical story that came from working with older adults, and they continue to keep you on your feet and surprise you by what comes out of their mouth.
Absolutely. I totally see that. Like, when I go home and see my grandma, it's just like the delivery is also just like half of it. The things that she says, I understand that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean the heartfelt side of it too. You're with people at the end stage of life, and you're in very intimate moments with them where you're helping them and trying to keep their dignity. So it's also a very rewarding field to get into as well.
Absolutely. You mentioned how you hold a position with the Douglas County.
Over at the health center. Yep.
Yes. Sorry.
It's okay.
How did you get involved for that role, and kind of how did that spark your interest into shifting into the entrepreneur aspect of your career? How did that happen?
Yeah, so very quickly kind of got to transition into leadership roles at Douglas County. A lot of opportunity for career growth there, which I'm forever grateful for. The people that kind of believed in me and pushed me up quite quickly, but one of the first tasks I got to take on as the program director was kind of the beginning peaks of COVID was nursing recruitment and retention. And pretty much everywhere in the United States mid-pandemic was trying to find nurses, retain them, get them to stay on during a global pandemic. And we struggled significantly with trying to bring in a younger population. We had lots of nurses that would rotate through for their geri psych rotations, and we would have physical therapist students, occupational therapist students come, and no one would come back. And I just felt like I had to really dive into why don't a younger millennial Gen Z generation want to work in senior care. So started kind of researching and meeting with students and talking with them. And a lot of the younger generation want a flexible work schedule. They don't want to work 12, 14-hour shifts. They don't want to work every other holiday. They don't want to work every other weekend. And so in talking to these students or, athletes, they're like, I have games, I have clinicals, I have things going on in my life. I can't commit to these rigid healthcare schedules that the traditional healthcare way is. Sure. So the concept of Superb on one half of things was to basically bring the flexible schedules to nurses. So on our tech company at Superb, we allow senior care facilities to post their open shifts, but then healthcare workers get to pick where they want to work, when they want to work, for how much they want to work. So I know like a DoorDash or Uber, they're able to see their prices, they're able to create their own schedule, and they're not locked into, that traditional bedside schedule that a nurse would have. So kind of feeling those pain points at Douglas County is really what sparked the idea to create something more innovative and solution-based for healthcare workers to try to keep them and get them attracted to the geriatric space.
Yeah. That's awesome that you saw such a need and such a lack for a certain population, getting into the healthcare field and just finding a way to make it work for how the times have changed and how our lives are just so fast paced and time is valuable, time is limited. So that's awesome. Is your app like nationwide? How is it growing? How is it doing?
Yeah, so we are in about 7 states right now, okay. Predominantly in the Midwest. One of the additions or extra things you have to think about when creating a tech company in healthcare is the compliance. So each state has different license types and different ways you onboard and credential healthcare workers. So we've had to be really strategic into which states we're going into, which states have the marketplace concept. So we need cities that have a certain amount of population, a certain amount of licensed healthcare workers to kind of make that matchmaking service happen. But we've seen a lot of success in the Midwest. We've had a great success in Nebraska. It's been an awesome state to start a business in. I spoke to some Creighton students actually a few weeks ago, and that was probably one of my biggest pieces of advice was this is a great state and city to start a business in. One, just the local support, but also the cost of doing business in Omaha, Nebraska is so reasonable. So it's definitely been good to us so far.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to take a little break. Okay. With Superb Shifts, how did you navigate jumping from healthcare into the business world? How did you find your partner to venture out on that aspect? And was it challenging to leave something that you've known for so long?
Yeah, I would say a huge challenge is going from healthcare where, you're talking in Medicare, Medicaid, CPT codes. It's kind of its own language. And then jumping into business where you're talking in P&L and, accounting and different things. So it was a huge transition for me to navigate managing in healthcare specific to, launching a business and a startup and taking investors and raising capital. So, starting at the bottom, I found my co-founder, and his background is specifically finance and sales. So we kind of balance each other out in that. And he was able to help make those connections and networks for me and answer all of my, I'm sure, basic entrepreneur questions that I didn't know at the time. So it started with the two of us, and then we found at the time, he was part-time, now he's full-time, a CTO. And so he really looked at the tech aspect of the business and was able to, again, another language, tech companies, it's such, how engineers operate and think is so different, as well as healthcare. So the three of us kind of balanced each other out, and the three of us took it pretty far. And then, as I mentioned, we raised capital. So we were able to start building a team. And that was some great lessons I learned in the beginning. The hard way probably was just how important building a team is, especially when you're so small. Everybody is doing everything. You're the CEO, but you're also taking out the trash, per se. So you have to find people that are willing to put in the time and the effort and understand the potential of the business, and they have to believe in the potential just as much as you do as the founders. So building a team and scaling a team and choosing the right people when you're so small and you have to do so much in the beginning is so important, because, same in relation to sports, one person with kind of a poor attitude or who doesn't believe in a win is going to completely disrupt or hurt your team.
For sure. Yeah, you need everyone in the boat rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think that finding the right people has been one of your biggest challenges, or is it just kind of, what's been your biggest challenge, I would say?
Yeah, I would say building a team has been one of the biggest challenges. I think initially, probably the biggest hurdle for us was, we're creating something that hasn't been done before. And we're doing it in healthcare where things are a little behind the times. They're a little set in their ways. And so you're trying to convince people to see something that's not a thing yet, essentially. And as an entrepreneur, you constantly just know most people will look at you like you're crazy. You have an idea to see something that's not there yet. And so for me, I tried not to take it personally when everyone, kind of calls your baby ugly in the beginning. They're not understanding what you're trying to achieve until the results are tangible and repeatable. And in healthcare, most people, they've adopted an idea. Not really everyone's on board yet. So I think in the beginning, my biggest challenge was trying to innovate and push, geriatric healthcare to think outside the box. Once that hurdle was over, then I think the next big hurdle for us was building the team, having the right people in the right seats, and getting the team to all row in the right direction. And startups sound really fun, and they can be really fun, but they're also really hard. And some weeks you're there until 1 a.m, unfortunately. And then some weeks you get to have more of a flexible schedule, but you just have to find the right people that want it as bad as you do.
Yeah. That was an interesting point that you brought up about just healthcare, how it seems like it's behind the times. And I know maybe healthcare is good with like accepting new technology, and so maybe you're in the right position, but it's interesting to think about how maybe healthcare is behind in other fields compared to something else about picking up new ideas and just having a new avenue to go about their business and accomplishing what they want to do, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I would, you can compare it to if you're selling a fun, new, flashy tech product and it's for online shopping. It's one way to adopt that. It's another when you're impacting people's lives in healthcare. Just the level of compliance and, hoops you have to jump through and people you have to convince that from an operations level, like this is going to keep everyone safe. No, we're not going to have any issues with this. It's just another level of pressure. And so it does take probably more resources, more time to get that early adopter as some of your first customers and getting them bought in to kind of prove to the masses that something will work. I think once you can do that and you can get over that challenge and that hurdle, then your path starts to clear a little bit, but it's definitely a little bit harder in healthcare to get early buy-in. Yep.
So what's the dream for Superb Shifts? Is there new spaces that you aspire to be in, or what's the ultimate goal?
Yeah, I would say we're in this for 4.5 years now, and so we really focused on nursing homes, assisted livings in the beginning, and now we've expanded our product to in-home services. So caregivers in the home, home health and hospice is kind of the next level and the next iteration of the product that we're trying to take the company in that direction, as well as expanding. As I mentioned, it's an investment on the tech side and the compliance side to move into additional states. So we're trying to be methodical and expand the right way, but the ultimate goal is to take the company into, adjacent geriatric spaces and then into a nationwide service.
That's awesome. What's been the best piece of advice that you've been given on this journey so far?
Oh, wow. I think I joined an entrepreneurship program early on. And as I mentioned, you don't know what you don't know when starting a business. And I kind of went in with it thinking you have to have it all figured out. And I realized from, a lot of the advice through the people who have built businesses and succeeded and failed is you don't have to have it figured out, but you do have to have the mindset of, rolling up your sleeves and be willing to put in the work. So I think that it's okay to fail and to try again, because most entrepreneurs move at a pace where you've made decisions and you've failed 3 times before someone else has taken 1 step. So I always just say, pick yourself up and keep moving and keep failing, and eventually you'll figure it out.
So what advice do you have for young entrepreneurs in that space, specifically maybe females getting into a space where there's not a lot of females? So what is your experience like in those situations?
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, I have a specific example I can share is, early on raising capital, one of the things I had to do was pitch to a group of 70 people. And I walked in and I think there was maybe 4 women and the rest, it was all investors, and only seeing 4 women faces in the crowd, it makes the situation a little intimidating. And there's been multiple instances or times when people have asked questions or made comments, and I don't necessarily think they're meant to be rude or degrading, and they probably, didn't even mean to say it in that way, but it's often things that they probably wouldn't ask or say to a male, or, a comment on appearance or something like that. So I've used that as moments of keeping a chip on my shoulder and really being cognizant to lift other women entrepreneurs up. So any opportunity I have to collaborate or share my stories or help out another woman CEO or founder, someone wanting to, start a tech company, really leaning into that, because I think it's important as women that we help each other and pull each other up. And the ultimate goal one day would be to exit my company and then invest in other female entrepreneurs. So I think keeping that circle as part of my value is important to me. And then you couple that with age. Again, I've been in sales calls where people have asked me, if I'm still in high school, and I understand that it's a joke. But, again, it's something they probably wouldn't ask a male. And so I've just tried to use that as fuel to my fire. And I've used age as a benefit in that, in building a company in your 20s, you can be more risk tolerant. You can make risky decisions. You can kind of pour your everything into your company. And so that's really what I've said. And I'm if it doesn't work out, I'll have my 40s to figure out my retirement plan. Again, entrepreneurs, we have to be a little crazy and high risk tolerant. But, I think, student athletes and a lot of people, we think differently. We move at a different speed. We want to be our own boss. And so I don't think age is anything that should hold you back from starting your own thing or a lack of experience. I think it really boils down to just how hard you want to work.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, that's a great message for young entrepreneurs and people going into spaces where they aren't represented. So that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, that was another episode of the When Life Gives You Lemons podcast, brought to you by Dayspring Bank. Thank you very much, Maly, for joining us today. Talking about the entrepreneur spirit, her new app, Superb Shifts. Thank you so much. I'm your host, Morgan Maly. We'll see you next time.